Why some rappers survive every era and others don't.
Here's a question that doesn't get asked enough. Same talent, same era, same opportunities. But some rappers build careers that span decades, while others vanish after a few hits. Jay-Z dropped Reasonable Doubt in 1996. Nearly 30 years later, still a cultural force. Nas released Illmatic in 1994. Still making albums, still respected. Drake entered the mainstream in 2009. 15 years later, he's still dominating charts. But for every artist who survived, there are hundreds who didn't. Not because they couldn't rap, not because they lacked talent, but because staying relevant in hip-hop requires more than skill. It requires understanding a set of rules most artists never learn. And today, we're breaking down exactly what those rules are. Hip-hop doesn't stay the same. It evolves every 3 to 5 years. The sound shifts, the platforms change, the business model transforms. What made you a star on mixtapes won't make you a star on TikTok. What worked in the CD era doesn't work in the streaming era. And yet, certain artists move through every transition seamlessly. They evolve without losing themselves. They stay fresh without abandoning their identity. They don't just release music, they build systems. In this video, we're examining 5 laws that separate careers that last from careers that fade. We'll use real examples, documented patterns, and observable strategies. No speculation, just analysis. Let's dive into the first law. Law 1. Sound adaptation. Pull up Kanye West's The College Dropout from 2004. Soulful samples, chipmunk vocals, backpack rap energy. Now play Yeezus from 2013. Industrial, abrasive, minimalist. Then listen to Donda from 2021. Gospel-influenced, layered, experimental. 3 completely different sonic palettes, but it's still unmistakably Kanye. That's sound adaptation without identity loss. Drake operates differently. He doesn't reinvent, he integrates. When trap was rising in the early 2010s, he worked with Future and Metro Boomin. When Afrobeats started gaining global traction, he collaborated with Wizkid and Burna Boy. When UK drill became a movement, he linked with Heady One and Central C. He doesn't follow trends, he absorbs them early and makes them his own. Tyler, the Creator? Visible evolution. His early work on Goblin was raw, confrontational, and deliberately offensive. By Flower Boy in 2017, he was creating introspective, jazz-influenced, emotionally vulnerable music. By Call Me If You Get Lost, he was delivering confident, soul-sampled rap that felt classic but fresh. The audience didn't reject the change, they grew with him. Now, consider the 2000s. Ringtone rap, snap music, crunk, hi-fi. Dozens of artists had massive commercial success during that era. Look at the charts from that time. Many of those artists are no longer releasing music at a mainstream level. Not because they lost talent, but because they built their entire brand on a sound that became dated and they didn't evolve when the market shifted. Here's the thing though, if you change too much, you risk losing the second law entirely, and that's where a lot of careers fall apart. Law 2. Clear identity. Nas has been rapping for over 3 decades. His beats have changed, his production teams have rotated, his album concepts have varied, but his voice, his perspective, his technical ability, exactly the same. You hear a Nas verse from 1994 or 2024, and you know immediately it's him. That's identity preservation. Eminem evolved from shock rap to introspective storytelling to technical showcases, but his delivery, his intensity, his rhythmic complexity, unmistakable. J. Cole built his career on a crystal clear identity. conscious, thoughtful, grounded in narrative. He's never chased club records. He's never pivoted to trap just because it was trending. And because of that consistency, his audience knows exactly what they're getting every album cycle. Nicki Minaj is a masterclass in this. She's worked with pop producers, trap beat makers, drill artists, and everyone in between. But her delivery, her persona, her charisma, always distinct. You never confuse a Nicki Minaj verse with anyone else. 50 Cent maintained the same street authenticity and humor across his entire career, even as his business ventures expanded. Lil Wayne kept his distinctive voice and wordplay style consistent, even as he experimented with rock music and other genres. Here's the core insight. Your sound can evolve, but your identity must remain intact. The artists who last are the ones who adapt their production without losing their essence. Here's what the data shows. Artists who experienced rapid commercial decline often lacked a clear, consistent brand image that audiences could identify with across multiple projects. This isn't a character flaw, it's a strategic gap. Now here's the part most people miss. Even if you nail the sound and the identity, there's a third element that most artists completely overlook, and it's the one that actually creates wealth. Law 3. Business and control. Let's talk about Jay-Z for a second. Yes, he's one of the greatest rappers ever, but that's not why he's worth over $1 billion. He understood early that being an artist is just the beginning. Rockefeller Records, Rockaware, Def Jam Presidency, Tidal, Ducey, Rock Nation Sports. He built an ecosystem. He owned his catalog. He diversified his income streams. Master P pioneered this model in the 1990s. No Limit Records wasn't just a label. It was a distribution empire, a merchandise operation, a film studio. He owned the masters. He controlled the manufacturing. He kept the profits. Travis Scott is executing this in real time. Cactus Jack isn't just merch, it's a licensing engine. McDonald's collaborations, PlayStation partnerships, Nike releases, Fortnite concerts. He's turned his artistic identity into a business infrastructure that generates revenue independently of music sales. Lil Wayne survived industry turbulence because he built Young Money Records. Drake, Nicki Minaj, Tyga, an entire generation of artists came up under his infrastructure. Even when his own release schedule slowed, the business kept running. Rick Ross built Maybach Music Group and diversified into Wingstop franchises, creating multiple revenue streams beyond recording. Diddy transformed from rapper to mogul through Bad Boy Records, Sean John Clothing, Ciroc Vodka, and Revolt TV. Now contrast this with artists who achieved massive commercial success but had unfavorable contract structures. We've seen this pattern play out dozens of times. Successful artists from previous decades have publicly discussed losing millions due to lack of ownership or poor business infrastructure. This isn't about individual failure, it's about recognizing a structural pattern. Long-term careers in hip-hop are rarely sustained by talent alone. They require business architecture. But wait, there's one more element the biggest names leverage, and it has almost nothing to do with the music itself. Law 4. Culture and collaboration. Snoop Dogg has been culturally relevant for over 30 years. Not because he releases classic albums annually, but because he stays embedded in culture. He collaborates with emerging artists, he appears on cooking shows with Martha Stewart, he commentates on the Olympics, he invests in esports. He's a cultural icon who happens to rap, not just a rapper. 21 Savage understands strategic collaboration. He doesn't feature on everything. He curates his appearances. Drake, Metro Boomin, J. Cole, Travis Scott, Post Malone. Every feature intentionally expands his reach into different audience segments.
Lil Baby became one of the defining rappers of the 2020s, not just through solo records. He collaborated strategically across genres and regions, pop crossovers, street records, international features. He positioned himself at the cultural center, not the margins. Outkast didn't just make influential music. They shaped fashion, they influenced the film, they changed how the South was perceived in hip-hop culture. They transcended rap because they understood culture moves in cycles, and you either position yourself ahead of them or get left behind. Migos dominated the late 2010s partly through constant collaboration that kept them in cultural conversation even between solo projects. Cardi B leveraged her personality and collaborations to stay culturally present beyond music releases. Here's the pattern. Collaboration isn't about clout chasing, it's about maintaining cultural presence. When you remain culturally visible, you stay relevant even during gaps between album releases. When you isolate, audiences move on to whoever's currently active. And then there's the layer nobody talks about. In 2026, cultural presence alone isn't enough. There's a fifth law that's completely rewritten the rules, and it's all about digital strategy. Law 5: Algorithm Era Survival. The 2020s represent more than just a sonic shift. They're a complete transformation of how music reaches audiences, and the artists who understand this are dominating. Kendrick Lamar rarely posts on social media. He releases music every few years. He avoids interviews. But when he drops, it becomes a global cultural event. His strategy? Controlled scarcity. In an oversaturated market, scarcity creates demand. Drake operates with the opposite approach. He releases constantly. He dominates playlist ecosystems. He maintains algorithmic momentum. His strategy? Omnipresence. And in the streaming era, omnipresence also works. Two completely different tactical approaches, both highly effective. Playboi Carti built his entire resurgence around aesthetic mystery. He doesn't leak music, he doesn't flood the market, he builds anticipation. His fan base turns every snippet into a movement. His rollouts become cultural moments because of strategic withholding. Ice Spice rose to prominence in 2023 by mastering TikTok's algorithmic mechanics. Short, quotable hooks, simple, viral-friendly visuals, consistent posting rhythm. She understood that in the algorithm era, you don't necessarily need a full album to build a fan base. You need repeatable, shareable moments. Lil Nas X broke through with Old Town Road by understanding cross-platform virality, turning a TikTok moment into the longest-running #1 hit in history. Glorilla leveraged regional authenticity with platform-native content to build momentum that translated to mainstream success. Here's what's fundamentally changed. The algorithm rewards two things: consistency or scarcity. It punishes artists stuck in the middle. If you're not releasing frequently enough to maintain algorithmic favor, or rarely enough to generate organic demand, you fade from view. The streaming data backs this up. Independent artists who master playlist placement, algorithmic recommendation systems, and platform-specific content strategies often achieve better engagement metrics than traditionally signed artists who lack digital infrastructure. The game isn't only about musical quality anymore. It's about understanding where your audience consumes content and strategically meeting them there. So if all these strategies work, why do so many talented artists still disappear? Why others don't? Let's be clear. This section isn't about disrespect. It's about recognizing observable patterns. There are three common archetypes that correlate with short-term careers. Archetype 1, the viral moment artist. One massive song, millions of streams, global recognition, but no follow-up infrastructure, no catalog depth, no sustained audience building. Artists like Silento and Desiigner are publicly documented examples of this pattern. Watch Me, Whip Nay Nay, and Panda were genuinely massive commercial hits. The charts show it. Both songs reached #1 and generated significant revenue. But the careers didn't sustain beyond those moments. This isn't about lack of talent. It's about the difference between a viral moment and career infrastructure. Archetype 2, the trend chaser. These are artists who chase every trend but never create one. They sound like whoever's currently popular. They adopt whatever aesthetic is trending. They lack a distinct voice. When trends shift, they have nothing authentic to fall back on. Audiences connect with the trend, not the artist. So when the trend ends, so does the connection. Archetype 3, the output burnout. Artists who release constantly without strategic curation. No quality control, no audience building between releases. The algorithm rewards consistency, but it also penalizes content with low engagement rates. If you're releasing weekly but generating minimal audience response, platforms reduce your promotional visibility. Bobby Shmurda exemplifies how external factors like incarceration can interrupt momentum, but also how difficult re-entry becomes without maintaining cultural presence. Fetty Wap had a dominant 2015, but struggled to maintain relevance when unable to replicate that specific sound in evolved market conditions. Here's the broader insight. These outcomes aren't personal failures, they're natural market dynamics. Hip-hop is intensely competitive, attention is finite, and the artists who build long-term careers treat them as businesses with infrastructure, not just creative expressions. Let's consolidate everything. Law 1. Sound adaptation. Evolve your production without losing your artistic identity. Law 2. Clear identity. Maintain recognizable core elements across every sonic shift. Law 3. Business and control. Own your intellectual property. Build infrastructure. Diversify revenue streams. Law 4. Culture plus collaboration. Stay in cultural conversation. Remain visible beyond album cycles. Law 5. Algorithm era survival. Master digital platforms, understand distribution mechanics, meet audiences where they consume content. These aren't subjective opinions, these are documented patterns across multiple decades of hip-hop history. The artists with lasting careers aren't always the most technically skilled, but they're consistently the most strategically aware. They adapt when markets shift. They own their business infrastructure. They maintain cultural connections. They understand the game is constantly evolving, and they evolve with it. Longevity in hip-hop isn't about who's the loudest. It's not about who has the most expensive videos or the flashiest lifestyle. It's about understanding that hip-hop reinvents itself every few years and positioning yourself strategically ahead of those shifts. It's about building something that transcends individual eras. Because eras are temporary, they come and go, but legacies, those last. If this breakdown added value, consider subscribing. We analyze music, culture, and strategy every week. Thanks for watching.